I'd like to welcome everyone to the third community meeting for the Land Needs Assessment and Official Plan Update for East Gwillimbury. This evening's session is focusing on sustainability and climate change, and I'd like to ask Marco from the municipality to say a few words of welcome and to get the meeting started, and then we'll get right into the content for this session.
Great, thank you, Donna, and welcome to everybody this evening. It's great to see residents and stakeholders who are attending these sessions. We had two sessions last night, and we've got two tonight as well as part of our official plan update. And so the purpose of this, as you'll hear from Don and Ron, is really to seek input from members of the public and our stakeholders as we move forward in developing and updating our new official plan. And there will be additional public consultation sessions as we move forward through to the fall. So I just wanted to mention that we do have, the planning partnership as our lead consultants assisting us with our official plan update, and they've got a strong team behind them as well, a lot of experience in OP updates. And also recognize Adam Robb, our senior planner with the town of EG. He's assisting with managing this project and working closely with Donna and Ron's group. So at this point, and I know our CAO, Tom Webster, was also going to attend, but I don't see him yet. And he and the mayor would like to make some comments as well. If they join us, we'll give them the opportunity. But at this point, I'll turn it over to you and we can start the session.
Awesome. Thanks, Marco. Thank you very much for the introduction. So we have a presentation that we're going to walk through, Ron and myself, and then we're going to leave most of the time that we have set aside for this, for the conversation with everyone. You are welcome to use the chat box to share your thoughts, and I also will be inviting you to turn your mic on if you'd like to speak and talk to us that way as well. So let me get started. This is the third of 4 conversations we're having at this point of the official plan review. Yesterday, we had 2 terrific conversations on growth management and then on complete communities and housing. A great turnout at both sessions and a really interesting conversation. This work sits within the context of other public consultation and engagement activities that we've had so far. You may remember that we had a community visioning workshop back at the end of October. We had a number of sessions. We had a lot of topics that were raised during those conversations. And we used those sessions to help us form an overall vision statement and develop some fundamental principles that form the foundation of all the work that we're doing. So I share with you now the draft vision statement that we've put out to the municipality and the community to consider. And so the vision statement speaks to the notion that East Gwillimbury will evolve as a balanced, sustainable, and complete community, that it will have a range of employment opportunities, public service facilities, commercial uses, that the unique villages in the municipality will be supported as they grow and accommodate compatible development, that we make sure that we're protecting in the long term the character-giving elements in the municipality, like the natural areas and the farmland, and that we continue to support and celebrate the high quality of life for current and future residents. Nested under that vision statement are 8 draft principles that form the foundation of the work. They each cover a slightly different topic. So the first is about protecting and enhancing the natural heritage system, its ecological and hydrologic functions. The second is that foster a vibrant agricultural and rural community. The third speaks to the creation of complete communities. The fourth principle encourages and supports the creation of a full range of housing options. The fifth principle speaks to the importance of infrastructure planning and investment. The sixth, the cohesive, vibrant, and connected urban community. So it's talking about main streets, urban design, architectural excellence. The seventh principle is to make sure we're creating a resilient and environmentally sustainable community. And then the last principle talks about opportunities for economic development. So this was the first session that we had for community outreach last October. And then municipal staff led this event, which was Chat with a Planner, where they extended an open invitation to anyone to speak to Adam Robb, the municipality's planner on this project. It launched around the end of March this year, 2021, and 15 individual conversations were held on the telephone or virtual meetings. They were really helpful conversations, provided some really interesting insight to augment the workshops that we had in October, augment the conversations that we're having now, and then the future events that we're planning. Through those conversations, Adam recorded many, many notes and then used the content of those notes to prepare a word cloud. And the word cloud pulls out the most commonly used words and phrases, and the size of the font reflects the regularity with which those words were used. And so from all those conversations, a number of topics became the common theme. So people talked about responsible and logical growth, about providing more options for retail and commercial, the importance of the trails, affordability, making sure we're planning for schools and making sure we have a range of housing options for our kids as they become young adults with young families, protection of heritage and the town's identity, the importance of providing jobs so that people can live and work in East Gwillimbury, and then thinking about East Gwillimbury and how we can create a unique attraction. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to you, Ron, now to walk through the rest of the slides.
Thank you. And apologies to those who have been here for now their third run through on this presentation, but this is a slide that talks about since the beginning and since we started talking to people in East Gwillimbury. Donna talked about the vision and guiding principles, which is going to be the overarching statements of the evolution of East Gwillimbury over the next 25 to 30 years. Under the vision and guiding principles, we have 5 or 6 topics that we've been working through. Last night, we dealt with the first 3, complete communities, balanced growth, housing, community design. And tonight, this afternoon and tonight, we're dealing with the last 2. But these are all highly integrated elements of East Gwillimbury, and our plan will need to deal with all of these elements and how they work together to create a place where people want to live and to invest in the future. Next slide. The goal of our plan is to promote comprehensive planning so that we're thinking about linking future growth with infrastructure investment, community facilities, financial health of the community, parks, open spaces, schools, potential for healthcare, all of those important elements of a complete community. We know that East Gwillimbury does have a very good land supply that will be able to accommodate East Gwillimbury's share of growth in the region and across the Greater Golden Horseshoe to the year 2051. And it's important for East Gwillimbury to consider growth in context in order to ensure that the municipality is receiving opportunities for funding for future public services at the provincial and regional level, like education and healthcare. This is not the beginning of a process. East Gwillimbury has been around for a long time. Sharon, Holland Landing, and Mount Albert have been around a lot longer than East Gwillimbury. But certainly the municipality prepared a comprehensive official plan in 2010, and we will be building on the contents of that plan as we move into the time frame of this plan, which is, as I've mentioned, up to 2051. Next slide. This is the urban structure map from the current official plan. It's an interesting map, and it shows what East Gwillimbury looks like from a planner's eyes from 20,000 feet up in the air. Obviously, over on the right-hand side, on the east side of town, we have Mount Albert. Mount Albert is a nice little complete little community that serves its own population. It grew up as a rural service center, and to a large extent, it still performs that function today. It will build out to its boundaries, but those boundaries will not be expanded further. As we move over westerly, we have the agglomeration of Queensville, Sharon, and Holland Landing. And those areas have grown relatively substantially over the last 20 years, and they will continue to grow. The interesting part is the areas that are in white are what we call the white belt, and it's expected that future growth will be accommodated on those lands that are identified as white. They will not all be pink, and they will not all be blue. Pink is primarily residential with population serving employment opportunities, and that's schools, retail and service commercial, and other uses that tend to grow as the population grows. The blue are what we call employment land, employment opportunities, more business park, industrial types of work. Some important other elements of this plan are the gray band on the north edge there, just north of Queensville, and that is the planned Bradford Bypass, and that is back on the books, and the province is pursuing the approvals and funding strategies to complete that link. Also very important are the pale green and the brown blob that are in between Mount Albert, Sharon, Holland Landing, and Queensville. And those are lands that are subject to, in the instance of the green areas, to the Greenbelt Plan, provincial policy document. And the brown is subject to the Oak Ridges Moraine Plan. Both the regional official plan and the East Gwillimbury official plan must conform and implement those provincial documents. We do not see substantial changes to those documents until there are substantial changes to those documents at the provincial level. So we don't expect much change with respect to the rural agricultural community, and we don't expect much change to the natural heritage framework. We'll generally be following the regional advice on that aspect of the plan. So growth in and around Queensville, Holland Landing, and Sharon, a little bit of growth in Mount Albert, and then pretty much status quo in the brown and light green areas of the town. Next slide. Just to let everyone know what we're thinking about in terms of growth to 2051, we're thinking about an ultimate population of around 135,000 people and the accommodation of about 55,000 jobs. That would build out those white areas of the map that you saw previously, and it would support that Highway 404 connecting link, which we call the Bradford Bypass. Really important to this conversation is the development and expansion opportunities for the Upper York Sewage Solutions Project and the Water Reclamation Center. Again, fundamental to comprehensive planning is to make sure that growth in terms of land use and population and employment growth is absolutely linked to the ability of the community to provide services. We also want to make sure that we're managing long-term land supply over time, and that will require phasing strategies and further planning work to make sure that things are happening in an appropriate, market responsive, and competitive development environment. Next slide. So tonight, this afternoon's topic is sustainability and climate change. And that's a really important component of our thinking at this point. Back in 2010, the municipality was leading edge in their official plan. The Thinking Green development standards were something that not many municipalities were doing. And now municipalities are attempting to catch up to East Gwillimbury. In addition, the provincial policy statement and the Planning Act have recently been updated, and they're starting to focus the attention on a response to climate change, and part of that is about sustainable development. So we will be looking for updated approaches to sustainability. We will be promoting complete communities. That means that everybody should be able to provide their daily needs, shopping, recreational opportunities, educational opportunities, healthcare, all within East Gwillimbury, to reduce the requirement to drive to work or to drive to get those services. We will be looking at the Thinking Green development standards and updating them and bringing them up to date. Certainly, the building code has surpassed the requirements of the green development standards to a certain extent, so we need to make sure we're right up to date. We will be promoting energy and resource efficiency measures, and that will be talking about service infrastructure, waste management, energy supply, and distribution. Next slide. A somewhat more recent topic for planners to consider is the topic of resiliency. We will be looking for opportunities to make East Gwillimbury more resilient to the effects of climate change, and to be frank, the effects of other human-made disaster events that, while we can't anticipate what they are exactly, we can have in place plans to make sure that in the event of a disaster event, East Gwillimbury is able to function, is able to provide food and water and shelter to its population, and to react in an appropriate way. I don't have to tell anybody, but recently we've been dealing with a human-made event, and it has shown that we were not well prepared to deal with this kind of pandemic. So we need to make sure in a resilience planning approach that we're doing better. Resilience and sustainability are linked in terms of, again, supporting renewable energy resources, reducing heat island effect through the green building standards that we can include, and talking about the urban forest and the natural heritage system and their role in mitigating climate change over time. Next.
So the next slide is the next step. So I thought we just pause now, and I want to just launch a quick polling question just so we can understand who's on the call. I always think that it's useful to know, for everybody, to know who we're talking to. So I'll just give it a second and let a couple more people respond. So that's what we've been finding in all of our sessions, that it's almost 50-50 for residents and developers or their representatives. So you can see the screen that I'm sharing. So I'm going to just stop sharing my big screen and see if, and I welcome you to use the chat box if you'd prefer to share your thoughts in the chat box. So any questions at all with respect to sustainability and climate change, is anything you want to drill down in any of the topics that Ron was talking about? were the vision and principles. So Ron spoke specifically about green standards. He talked about planning for a resilient community.
I've got a question.
Sure, go ahead.
Just heard there, human-made disasters. What was he referring to there? I just kind of caught the last part of that, being more resilient to human-made disasters.
Like a
Ron, pandemic.
Yeah.
Okay, like the current pandemic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I just one of my biggest things around the current pandemic is right now it's kind of self-sustainability, and I don't hear too much about self-sustainability. I hear a lot about sustainability, but what kind of guards can we look forward to? Like, so, we all kind of saw we got locked down in our homes, and those that are lucky enough not to be in apartments that actually had a piece of property and a house where we could go outside and go to a garden, we're very lucky. But I do notice some of these climate change policies coming in make it harder to use the land that you have. So if you want to have a garden, or you want to maybe clear some trees to have more food, or to build another structure to maybe you're curing meat or whatever you want to do, just in case of a pandemic that comes along and there's a food shortage or something like that, or the grocery stores shut down, or there's a cyber attack and the grid goes down. What kind of self-sustainability measures are going to be implemented into this plan?
So is the root of your question, Russ, because I heard something about natural heritage features or something, and maybe wanting to clear them to provide more arable land. Is that the root of the
Yeah, so I heard something about more heritage enhancement. I'm not too sure.
Natural heritage
enhancement. So we saw this last time in 2010, where the introductions of the environmental protection zones were kind of placed on people, and it reduced much of what they could use their land for. And it kind of restricted them, in case of a pandemic or something like that. So
and you're making the link to the pandemic by saying that using potentially land that's cleared of its natural heritage features to be able to grow food,
to be able to survive,
okay,
to be
so
self-sustainable.
Ron, do you want to weigh in a bit on that?
Well, I don't necessarily agree that those two things are specifically linked. I would probably suspect that the protection of the natural heritage features within East Gwillimbury provide a much more important ecological role than food production. There are other areas in East Gwillimbury, lots of them, where food production is a primary land use. The pandemic is not a reason to start cutting down or reducing the size of the natural heritage system, because the natural heritage system provides substantial benefits to society.
Okay. Thanks for that, Ron. I see a couple of questions coming in on the chat box. Adam, do you want to?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first question was involving what kind of jobs we're targeting specifically within the green economy, recognizing that our target is that 55,000 number.
Well, I would have to understand what the green economy is. I don't know what you mean by that. I don't know what's meant by that.
So do you want to just turn your mic on and just provide some clarity on that? The person who's asking that question. There you go. Yep.
Yeah, Mike Trowbridge here. So specifically, I'm talking about jobs within the, the sustainability economy. So if we're talking about like vertical farming or things that are going to support sustainability within, e.g. and beyond, like within the region, for example, as opposed to just, I guess sort of everyday manufacturing type jobs or anything like that. I wondered if there was a specific target that goes along with the sustainability and climate change plan that you're outlining here.
Okay.
Well, I do want to be very clear. This is not a sustainability climate change plan. This is the official plan that deals with matters of land use as it affects the town of, or the municipality of East Gwillimbury. So the key here is that we are targeting 55,000 jobs, and we would suggest that all jobs are positive jobs in the way that jobs are developed in a municipality. The way that it is done through provincial legislation is that there's two types of jobs. Population-related jobs, which are institutional, service, commercial, retail, etc. And then there's employment land employment jobs. And those are typically typical industrial or business park type jobs. Other types of jobs will absolutely be permitted, and it will be up to the municipality how they want to attract jobs and what types of jobs they would like to attract. Certainly, I'm not sure vertical farming and that kind of job, rural agricultural economy is absolutely important to East Gwillimbury, and that will be nurtured as well. All jobs will be explored.
Okay.
So I see the next is from Graham. I'm not sure if this is more of a comment, but maybe I can speak to it too. It says that he notices on our word cloud there for the chat with the planner that the word sustainable was in a rather small font, that the public has to be made more aware of East Gwillimbury's efforts in this regard, I imagine. I can speak to that a bit, just in the sense that that word cloud also had other keywords that were thrown into that sort of relate to that sustainable theme, whether that be nature or trails and the like. But you know, that's a comment that is received as well in terms of this official plan review, spreading more awareness as needed, if there's any other comments. So next, a question would be, Ron talked about ensuring complete communities. How is Mount Albert going to become a complete community? Because currently it is not.
Fair enough on that question. Mount Albert is small, and it's not big enough to have the goods and services for the entire population. The goal here is to make sure that East Gwillimbury, in its totality, is a more complete community. And we can make Mount Albert as complete as we can in terms of allowing more forms of development than just residential development. There are lands in Mount Albert that are identified for retail and service commercial uses, as well as employment land uses. Certainly, there is a deficit in things like healthcare, for example. But the goal is first to make East Gwillimbury more complete, and then it's a matter of scale as to what individual neighborhoods or communities within East Gwillimbury, what level of completeness they can achieve over time.
Okay. And I see, John, you've got a question you wanted to ask, so go ahead, turn your mic on.
Yes, I would like to further to what Russ Robson said about self-sustainability. In the past, we've had attempts to environmentally plan property for no scientific reason. In fact, for no reason whatsoever that makes any sense anyway. I think what he was alluding to is that people would like to say, build a shop in their backyard so that they can work at something that makes them some money or saves them some money. They might want to put a greenhouse in to feed themselves during the winter. The bylaws, by and large, prevent these types of things. So hence, I think his clarification on self-sustainability.
Okay,
that we are people who, I think by and large, I live in River Drive Park, and I find the people here are not your white collar, clerical, managerial type of people. They're entrepreneurs. They're people who basically do for themselves. It's very rare to find a person in the park that doesn't have a chainsaw, for example. It's just one of those things. We'd like to do for ourselves.
Okay, so John, is the question then, it's more small scale. So you think that there are limitations in property owners of adding a greenhouse or a workshop on their property because of the rules around natural heritage features. So Ron, do you want to?
Well, just not only natural heritage, but many other things as well.
Right, the planning. Or is that
Got it. So I'd like to break my answer down into two parts. There's the urban part and what people may be allowed to do within the more urban elements of East Gwillimbury. And then there's the rural agricultural part and in the Oak Ridges Moraine. I'm going to deal with that part first. In the rural agricultural area of East Gwillimbury, as I said, we have a heavy-handed policy framework from the province that we have to deal with. However, I would note that the province also, through the provincial policy statement, has provided opportunities for substantially more flexibility in exactly what you're talking about. Home industries, home-based businesses, makerspace, and we will be looking into that to see what we can do to utilize the enhanced possibilities from the provincial policy statement with respect to the Greenbelt Plan and the Oak Ridges Moraine Plan. Similarly, within the urban area, absolutely correct, there is much more interest in expanding upon the home occupation definition and start thinking about other types of work at home spaces that could be accommodated on properties within an urban context. So we will be looking at home industries and what we call maker spaces, which are like artisan studios, small scale workshop kind of spaces within the urban area, and how to make sure that they can be accommodated without establishing any significant impact on neighbors. So there is a move afoot towards allowing more than a typical home office or a small scale dentist or a hairdressing salon. So thank you for that question, and we will be looking for opportunities to broaden those permissions.
okay? Thanks.
Good. I'm encouraged to hear that, and it will certainly take some zoning bylaw changes to accommodate that.
Start with the
trickle down into the zoning.
Sorry?
Start with
trickle into the zoning.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
okay.
thank you.
Thanks for that. And then Adam?
Yes, so the latest comment from Mike saying, regarding growth of the community areas, and as noted by the rooftop solar panels in many of the photos, are we going to be pressing for sustainable energy requirements with developers for electricity needs and heating for homes, such as geothermal heat pumps?
Interesting question. The word that interests me is, are we going to be pressing?
Pressing, yeah.
The approach so far in Ontario, for the most part, has been a permissive approach to allow things to happen rather than require things to happen or compel people to do things. Things are moving from permission to compelling slowly. In fact, the building code has been much quicker than the Planning Act in that regard. The municipality has no particular legislative authority to compel, so we have to look at opportunities to permit and potentially incent. So provide some incentives for people to do sustainable things, particularly with energy. So we'll be looking at finding the right balance between what we are going to require and how far we can go within the existing legislation, and then identifying things that might be incentivized or still things that might simply be permitted.
Okay. Anything else in the chat?
Yeah.
That we're getting, Adam?
Yeah, John just wrote, in follow up to that last question, perhaps a property tax credit for solar, et cetera. Just a note.
That's fair as something to bring up.
Okay.
I also had to, I want to touch on one of those things said, tax incentives. I actually brought that up a few years ago, that especially with these green spaces, these buffer zones, the EP zones, the enhancement of the heritage things, those were felt like they were kind of, they kind of took away from people who had been good to their properties, who had been good stewards of the earth. They were getting punished by property devaluation. And a lot of people actually thought maybe it was a good idea to get out there and cut the trees down before they're EP zoned. And that kind of causes a negative effect on the environment and on personal finance. So I have heard some of the counselors, I believe Carruthers said she would like to see green buffer zones in between each of the town lines. And I believe she had pointed to those people, whoever own those properties should be environmentally protected. But I think a smarter approach would be to have tax incentives. If people have been good stewards of the earth, if they have so much foliage on their property, maybe they should be, their property taxes should be lowered somehow. And that would incentivize more people to grow more trees and to have more green on their properties. That's one of the ideas there. If they have tax incentives, I did see a newspaper article where Virginia was talking about taking some of the pot farmers to court, and that we were lucky enough to have a nice bank account here in East Gwillimbury. So I would think maybe some tax incentives wouldn't be such a bad idea.
Ron, do you want to weigh in on that?
That was not a question, that was a statement.
It's a comment.
I tend not to answer statements.
Okay.
Then here's another one. I grew up in this town. I've got a lot of young friends. They have young families. They cannot afford to live here anymore. They're moving away. They're going up north. They've been priced out of the market here. And for people with properties, I don't know, I know people that are moving back home with their parents. They have young kids. And there's not very many options. And I think that I believe Barry just brought in, they're allowing people to have tiny houses and things like that if you have a certain amount of property. And I think that might be a good idea to help get through some of this housing bubble right now. If we could allow people to have tiny homes or whatever that, use their property to help their families.
Good. That's a really good point. Maybe Ron, you could weigh in a little bit on what we talked about yesterday with additional dwelling units, just a quick snapshot.
Tiny houses sometimes get confused with what I'm going to talk about, but what I'm going to talk about could be a tiny house. So provincial government, through Bill 108, requires that every municipality allow an additional residential unit within an existing dwelling, within every single semi and townhouse dwelling. Those used to be called accessory apartments. They are also allowing an additional residential unit in a detached building on the lot. So that will be integrated into the official plan, and the municipality will be working to come up with the parameters that will permit that. And I agree, that's a fantastic opportunity to build tiny houses. One key though, and where the tiny house, depending on what you define a tiny house as, is that those additional residential units in an accessory building, it needs to be a building, not a trailer.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the tiny houses that I'm referring to, they are mobile. They're mobile tiny houses. It's kind of a big fad right now. You see a lot of families downsizing. And
yes.
The key is, and there is a philosophy behind it, is that they have to meet the building code and the fire code. And the purpose of that is to ensure the health and safety of the residents. So we're going to be working with that. I'll look forward to your advice as we work through that part of it, but I think it's really exciting.
Sure. Great.
Okay. I want to, just before we finish, I just want to launch just one other question. And that is, I just want
papers.
Papers of
questions.
Oh, good. Okay. Okay. We're not finished, but we'll just take a break. And I just want to understand where everybody is joining the meeting from. So we could just take a second and help us understand the distribution. And this just helps us understand whether we have to target a particular area for more outreach through the process. And let's just give it another second or two. Okay, so you can see, I'm going to end the poll and then share the results. So you can see where everybody is coming from. So thank you for that. It's very helpful. Okay, so Russ, did you have other questions that you wanted to ask that haven't been covered?
I sure do. So one of the things I wanted to ask about was, so I hear more and more about climate emergencies, that East Gwillimbury wants to declare a climate emergency. And I want to know more about that. I want to know why. I want to know with what data they're using to declare an emergency. And I want to know if they understand the implications of declaring a climate emergency and what that means as far as regionalization goes, because I am worried that East Gwillimbury is moving towards regionalization and we may be losing our small representative government here within the next 20 to 30 years.
Okay, so let me see. Is that a question for you, Ron, or is it better for Marco too?
Not for me.
Marco, would you be?
Hey, Donna. Hi, Russ. No, I think, Russ, you are referring to, I believe that came a number of months ago from our Environmental Advisory Committee that had, they meet monthly, and they had made that recommendation to Council. Council hasn't taken a decision on that yet. That was something that they were considering. And I believe similar environmental committees from other municipalities have made the same sort of recommendation to their local councils. Again, I don't have much more information other than that with respect to what other regional municipality or local municipalities within York Region, whether I'm not aware of any other area municipality declaring a formal climate emergency at this point. Okay. That was a comment we received from our Environmental Advisory Committee a number of months ago.
Okay, thanks, Marco.
Okay, so yeah, that's going to be a hot topic too, because I think it's just climate change emergency. I think a lot of what we're doing right now within sustainable development is gearing towards the climate, and I see a lot of like the entire official plan seems to be directed towards sustainable development. It's directed towards Agenda 2030. Everything that I read in your report there is 100% what I read on Agenda 2030. It's nothing new. It's happening in every single country, Western countries. It's happening in the States, Australia, New Zealand. We're all having the same land use planning zones and land use planning developments in each country, in each town, in each province. And I'm kind of wondering, are you guys aware of that? Are you aware that you are following the exact same plan that every single other town is doing currently in pretty much the Commonwealth? Are you aware of that?
I'm not sure what report from this exercise you're talking about.
Just like your land use planning, your vision report, when you're naming off some of your sustainability goals and a lot of that.
Just so you're aware, the vision statement and the principles were developed with the local community, with the stakeholders.
Okay,
right. So they are elemental, and they are things that many people are adopting and considering, like protecting natural heritage features and designing to encourage complete communities. And so they are things that are transferable to many other places. You are correct.
Okay. Yeah, I just know I've been studying up on Agenda 2030 a bit and researching it. And
okay.
Like I said, one of my other things is there going to be, are we looking at private property rights? Are we respecting private property rights in the OP? Are we going to be, one of the biggest things with the last time we did this was there was a lot of land use changes on people's properties. They weren't made aware of it. Are people going to be notified? Are there plans to, like, with enhancement of natural heritage assessments? I believe Ron Palmer also said something about a regulatory regime. I believe in October, I heard something about that. I didn't quite understand what that meant.
So let me just break down the question a little bit. So are we going to be concerned about private property rights? Are we going to be informing people if there's changes to the land use designation? So, Ron.
I don't know yet. We haven't done anything yet on that front. However, and I'm sure Russ knows that in Ontario, the municipalities have the responsibility to plan. And that affects property rights, whatever property rights actually means. The Planning Act gives a municipality to bestow land use permissions on every property. So at the end of the day, the municipality has to go through a process. And the process includes public consultation all the way through the process. So if we are making adjustments on people's property, everybody is informed in East Gwillimbury that this is going on. It's not a zoning bylaw, it's the official plan. So it's not the absolute right of what to do on your property is bestowed by the zoning bylaw. So this is just part of the bigger overarching planning policy framework that then gets implemented in detail through zoning. And there is public consultation all the way through both the preparation of the official plan and the preparation of the comprehensive zoning bylaw. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Marco, but.
No, Don, no, Ron, no, I mean, you captured it. I mean, I know Ross, we've had some discussions in the past. Just to be clear, this is sort of the overarching, land use plan for the municipality, right? It's not the detailed zoning bylaw. If depending on what changes come through with this official plan, and everybody will be notified. This is an extensive public process after this plan is adopted by council. If there's a need to then amend the zoning bylaw to bring that into conformity with the official plan, that's a separate process. And then again, we start with that public process to inform people that we're seeking to make some changes to the zoning bylaw, and that'll come later on.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else on your on your list, Russ?
I don't want to hold you guys all night.
No, that's okay.
I was supposed to be
I'm keeping
part of
an
it
eye.
last night, and I missed the meeting last night. Something happened. I didn't get the invite there, and I couldn't sign on.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
But I got concerns about smart growth also. I know that we're really headed towards smart growth. And I know in other areas in Ontario, there's been talks of stopping detached homes, stop building detached homes, aim more towards low income housing types of like townhouses, that kind of thing.
But that's not necessarily low income housing though, Russ.
Oh yeah, not anymore. No, it's not. Yeah. But is that kind of the plan too? Is that what we're going to be aiming to do? Stop more larger types of subdivisions and kind of build more compact development areas?
Well, you've said about 5 catchphrases.
Yes.
Which they all mean slightly different things. I don't think you've heard me say the word smart growth.
No.
Although the opposite of that would be stupid growth. So I don't know. Smart growth is kind of an older phrase. Compact communities, absolutely. Banning single detached houses, absolutely not. We're trying to find a balance.
Mm-hmm.
So that it would be good. All the meetings have been recorded. And so the session that we had yesterday on complete communities and community design, we did talk a little bit about just what Ron mentioned and the opportunity to make sure there's a whole range of housing provided in different forms. Mm-hmm. Multifamily, mm-hmm. Smaller lots, townhouses, stacked townhouses.
And I guess the other question I really had was about protecting Class 1 farmland. East Gwillimbury's got a lot of Class 1 farmland.
Yep.
How are we planning on protecting that? And are there going to be incentives for farmers and rather that they're not selling out to developers?
Okay.
I hope you were listening when I showed the map. And yes. I said all of that green mm-hmm. is going to remain as green. It's the Greenbelt plan. There's not development permitted in there. And the Oak Ridges moraine, the brown blob in the middle, is even more restrictive. So we don't anticipate, first of all, being able to make significant changes there or making any changes. All the future growth of East Gwillimbury, while there's some in Mount Albert, is to be focused in and around Sharon, East Hollow Landing, and Queensville, in those white areas. Mm-hmm. Notwithstanding the vacant blue and pink areas that are already in there, they'll be built out as well.
Yeah, so Ron is talking about all of this green and brown area being protected. Mm-hmm. Now, there's nothing much I don't think we can do to stop owners from selling their land to whoever they want to sell it to. Ron, is that?
Well, yeah,
that's correct.
Whenever they wish.
Yeah.
But, in the current planning framework of the province, the region, and the town of East Gwillimbury, or the municipality of East Gwillimbury, you can't do urban development on those lands.
Okay.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Okay. Let me get, now that I have the screen back up, I want Ron just to walk through what some of the next steps are. And sorry, just pause for 1 second. Adam, there's no other questions in the chat box that have been posed?
No other questions, no. And
okay, perfect.
One comment, John, but we can talk about that offline too.
Okay, so here we go. Ron, do you want to just walk through?
Sure. After tonight, a couple of things that we're doing is we continue to work with the region on growth and what the numbers will be to 2051 and how those growth numbers will be serviced in the long term. The second point is what we're doing last night and tonight. And very shortly after we're finished, we'll be completing our background reports. Our background reports are going to include a discussion about all the planning policy that we are working with from the province, from the region, and your current official plan. It will talk about what we heard through the consultation exercise, and then we'll be talking about what we are proposing to do in the new official plan. We expect to have a draft official plan available for public review in the fall, in the early fall, and we will have another round of consultation where we will be looking for commentary about the actual document that will include mapping at that time. Following that round of consultation, we'll make adjustments, refinements, changes to the document and hope to get back to a statutory public meeting before council late in 2021 or at the latest early 2022. And that's where we're at today.
Okay, is there anything else that anybody wants to share with us that we haven't had a chance to talk about? Either you can put it in the chat box or turn your mics on. John, did you have a question that you wanted to share?
Yes,
Ron, yep.
Ron had mentioned something about the green zone and that that would be protected and would not be changed. I would just like to point out that there is a application before council now for just such a change from environmentally protected to estate residential. To anyone who knows me, my views on environmental planned land are essentially that most of it was done artificially with absolutely not a snitch of scientific evidence. And I actually have a statement from the Simcoe Region Conservation Authority at their board of directors meeting June or July 2018, saying they recommended to the town of East Gwillimbury that they allow the residents of these 10-acre lots that are across Queensville Side Road to continue to use the first 600 meters and to environmentally plan all the rest of the land. Period. No scientific justification, nothing. And obviously I'm against that. But then I see someone who is applying to have an environmentally piece of property rezoned. I'm going, well, okay, but why was it environmentally planned in the first place?
Okay, and so is the question about that specific property, that the application that's before the municipality now?
I am discussing that with Jack Smith, and I'm sure we'll have further discussions. I just wanted to point out to people that, how can one put this politely? If you have the juice, you can have the changes made. Friday Harbor being the prime example, probably the most egregious example we've ever seen. So I'm always very, very suspicious. It's a follow the money routine. And I'm afraid I see the people who have a piece of property, maybe they have 10 acres, 100 acres. Someone walks in, environmentally plans it, all of a sudden that property that might have been worth $500,000 is now worth $200,000 because you can't do anything with it.
Okay, because your comment has to do with the kind of natural heritage overlay on people's property and the implications on property value.
Well, all of the various and sundry rules and regulations. What do we have? 8 or 9 different plans that have restricted property here in East Gwillimbury. Right. Wetlands and significant this and significant that, and I'm going, You know,
Yep, that's the planning process in Ontario.
yes.
Okay.
And basically, I would
So
just like to make people aware that I think there's a little more to it than that. Leave it at that.
Okay. Marco, do you want your mic is on?
No,
Do
I
you
think,
want-
yeah, John, no, I know we can talk offline, John. I know the application that came in. You're right. It is within, outside the urban area in the green belt, but it does have an old underlying estate residential designation. And so a rezoning application has come in. No decisions have been made. Obviously, we're obligated to, review the application, consider it, and report on it in the future. But, and I know you've been talking to Jack, but yeah, we can talk about that one offline.
Yeah, I'm not objecting to someone being able to build a house on their property.
Right. Okay.
My issue is that if something is environmentally planned and then sold because it was worthless, and then a developer comes along and says, oh, I'm going to buy up all this property, and bingo, town, I have this wonderful plan of subdivision for you. So there's different rules for developers and individuals, and I think people ought to be aware of that. That's all.
Okay, and I think I heard Marco mention something about underlying planning permissions, but I also heard Marco say that you guys could follow up and have another conversation offline. So that's terrific.
Thank you.
Okay, so with that,
I just wanted to add one more thing, just to touch back on. Is there currently, or is the town currently looking at putting green buffer zones in between the towns?
Ron.
Through the consultation exercise so far, I've heard the idea of what we're currently terming an urban separator. That between whatever it is, Holland Landing, Sharon, Queensville. But we haven't gone any further than to call it that. An urban separator can be many, many things, including a road. So while the concept has been discussed, we have no idea what they might be. And we have lots of time to talk about what it might be. But we haven't talked about, first of all, is it a good idea? Secondly, if it's a good idea, what is it? And thirdly, if we know what it is and it's a good idea, where does it go? We haven't had any of those conversations yet. It's just an idea.
Mm-hmm. Ideas are beautiful things. Just once again, I think me and John are both kind of touching on the same idea, whereas I hope that you guys will decide incentivize to see these green projects or buffers rather than regulate. And that's what I'm hoping to see anyways.
Okay. Thanks, Russ.
Thanks.
Okay, so maybe I can ask Marco to wrap up
Great.
the meeting.
Thanks,
on everybody's
Donna
behalf.
and Donna and Ron. I think another great session. A little smaller group, slightly smaller than yesterday, but a lot of questions. So some great
That
input.
was great.
Thank you to all. And just there'll be future, some future meetings as we move forward. We're in the middle of this process, so I'd just like to thank everybody. And anybody who has any questions, you can continue to send in an email to myself or to Adam, and we do our best to respond. And it'll be form part of our public record moving forward. I know Ross, you still have a number of questions, so feel free to give us a call. And just like to thank everybody for attending. And again, a shout out to the councillors who are also here this evening, Councillor Carruthers, Councillor Foster, and Crone, who are in attendance. So thanks very much to everybody, and I'm sure we'll see you again moving forward.
There was
Thanks.
one other question.
Yeah, so one question came up about when we're posting the sessions online, where they will be. So once we finish the 4 sessions, the last of which is coming up later on tonight, they'll all be posted online to the project webpage. And the recordings will be there, as well as the presentation material for everyone's viewing.
That's great. Okay. Thank you very much for carving out a bit of time, everyone. And keep an eye out on the webpage, as Adam just mentioned. Have a good evening and stay safe. Thanks so much, everyone. I'll end the meeting on everyone's behalf.